Ah, Roboute Guilliman, the avenging son, the self-proclaimed savior of the Imperium. To hear the ecclesiarchy tell it, Guilliman's return is a beacon of hope, a divine intervention by the Emperor himself. Yet those of us who are tasked with recording the truth know there's little cause for such optimism. Guilliman's return is not a blessing from the heavens, but a product of desperation, and worse, Eldar intervention. Yes, this so-called blessing comes by the hands of Xenos, the same Eldar who played with our galaxy like a game board long before the Imperium ever rose. If Guilliman's return is a miracle, it is one tainted by Xenos manipulation. The kind our ecclesiarchs and priests would have us burn for heresy in any other situation. But when the galaxy itself is crumbling, perhaps even a Primarch can be forgiven for accepting aid from our ancient foes. You see, Guilliman returned not to an Imperium united, but to an empire on the brink of annihilation. The Great Rift, known also as the Cicatrix Maledictum, slices through the galaxy like an open wound, dividing our Emperor's realm in two, plunging half of our territories into darkness and leaving entire sectors isolated and vulnerable to all manner of horrors. Planets once loyal, once safe, are now adrift, their people subjected to the worst forms of corruption and alien influences. It is said that Guilliman's indomitous crusade has brought reinforcements, that it has shored up defenses in far-flung reaches of our Imperium. But from my desk, quill in hand, I know the truth. It is but a trickle of aid in a galaxy on fire, a fragile line of defense against an endless wave of enemies who grow bolder with each passing cycle. But let us speak of this rebirth of the Primarch. His return has set tongues wagging, and many within the ecclesiarchy eye him with deep unease, even doubt. Guilliman preaches reforms, a rational vision for the Imperium, as if such concepts could be applied to this bloated, decaying empire. The wider Imperium has not the rigid structure and order of his beloved Ultramar. It is a quagmire of ancient pacts, stagnant traditions, and bureaucratic chaos, a machine that has long outgrown its purpose. Yet Guilliman seems determined to bring change. With him, he brings the Ultramarines, bound by the Codex Astartes, the sacred tome of war doctrine, as if it alone could right the course of this teetering empire. And there is the matter of his new creations, the Primarch Marines, stronger, faster, equipped with even more of the Emperor's genetic legacy. They are larger than the standard Space Marines, embodying Guilliman's reform in flesh and blood. Yet among the Astartes, their existence is met with suspicion and resentment. They are seen as Guilliman's imprint on the Adeptus Astartes, a mark that signals his return, but also his authority. The older chapters, proud and tradition-bound, view these towering soldiers as usurpers, newcomers who serve Guilliman's will over that of the Imperium's many venerable traditions. And let us not mistake these divisions for mere rivalry. Even in the loyal chapters there are rumblings of discontent, for to some, the Primarch Marines are an affront to their own legacy, a reminder that Guilliman now holds sway over the destiny of the Space Marines. Politically, Guilliman's return has thrown the High Lords into a panic. To some, he is a threat, a living Primarch with the authority to challenge their power, a figure who could, if he desired, take control of the Imperium outright. Guilliman's authority is not total, but it is broad enough to disrupt the delicate balance of Terra's leadership. The ecclesiarchy, that bastion of unyielding faith, has been loudest in its opposition, though not openly. For while Guilliman is a son of the Emperor, he is also a secular leader, a pragmatist who tolerates the cult of the Emperor only because it serves his vision for unity. He is careful not to oppose it outright, knowing the dangers of turning the Imperium's faithful against him. And yet, every word he speaks, every reform he proposes, sends ripples of dissent through the ecclesiarchy's ranks. One might think Guilliman's reforms would bring strength to the Imperium, but here lies the irony. For every change, there is a backlash. The ecclesiarchy tightens its grip on the faithful, preaching harder on the divinity of the Emperor to counter Guilliman's pragmatism. Among the High Lords, political maneuvers multiply, each faction positioning itself in anticipation of the Primarch's next move. Guilliman may see himself as the Imperium's savior, but from where I sit, his presence has merely accelerated the tensions and fractures that have always lurked beneath the surface. And what of the galaxy beyond our borders? Guilliman may dream of uniting the Imperium, but the threats outside grow ever stronger. The forces of chaos have not grown weaker in his absence, and with the great rift unleashed, they grow bolder, spilling forth from the warp in waves, laying siege to planets already reeling from isolation and despair. The Tyranids press in from the galactic fringe, their hive fleets devouring everything in their path. Each time we push them back, they return in greater numbers, hungrier and more insidious in their tactics. There are even whispers of something stirring within the Necron dynasties, ancient powers reawakening, sensing an opportunity in the Imperium's divided state. Guilliman's Indomitus crusade was meant to restore unity, yet the threats arrayed against us are so vast, so unyielding, that every gain seems a mere drop in an ocean of darkness. Guilliman himself, of course, is no fool. He knows the Imperium's vulnerabilities. He sees the cracks, the rot that has taken hold after 10,000 years of stagnation and unchecked zealotry. His hope for a reformed, united Imperium may sound noble, but to those of us who have recorded every failure, every catastrophe, it seems hopelessly naive. The Imperium's layers of bureaucracy are so entrenched that even his direct interventions are buried under mountains of parchment and protocol. The Administratum, tasked with managing the Imperium's vast territories, drowns in its own inefficiency. Each new reform is met with delays, with protests, and the endless paperwork of a machine that can barely manage itself, let alone an entire galaxy. And that is before we even speak of the dogma that governs every inch of our lives, every aspect of the Imperium's soul. Guilliman's secular reform clashes with the blind faith that holds the populace in check. The masses needs their emperor to be a god, a divine figure that justifies their suffering and obedience. Guilliman may try to sidestep this, but he treads a dangerous line. Alienating the faithful risks rebellion, yet endorsing the cult undermines his own ideals. In truth, we are fighting a war on all fronts with no end in sight. For every battle won, 10 more arise. Guilliman speaks of rationality, of reformation and unity, but even a Primarch's hand cannot reverse the rot that has set in. Among the Astartes, mistrust festers. In the ecclesiarchy, dogma tightens. And within the High Lords of Terra, ambition festers as factions seek power in a changing landscape. The galaxy teems with threats, and while Guilliman's forces stand ready to defend, each foe seems to strike harder, as if sensing the Imperium's weakening state. You might think the Primarch's return has strengthened us, and in some ways it has. He has brought reinforcements, new technology, and the Primary's Marines, all of which bolster our defenses. But for every victory, the darkness only deepens. It is a ceaseless war, a struggle against tides that seem unyielding, and while Guilliman's ideal of reclaiming the Imperium's lost glory is stirring, it is painfully clear to those of us on the inside that it is a vision rooted in fantasy, more so than reality. This is a galaxy of attrition, and even a Primarch cannot turn back the endless tide. Now, as for me, I am tasked, yet again, with recording the truth of these events. They have asked me to document this so-called era of change, to provide insight into the long, strange history of the Imperium of Man, its ceaseless wars, its triumphs, and all the horrors that lurk in the shadows. My duty is to recount our struggles against Xeno's scum, the corrupted servants of chaos, and the ambitions of those who would divide us from within. But as I write, as I inscribe each victory and every new reform, I cannot help but see this for what it truly is. A slow unraveling, the tightening of a noose around a wounded beast. I am but a scribe, a witness to the ebb and flow of our Imperium, and I have no illusions about the path ahead. I do not record with hope, nor with pride. I merely mark each chapter as it unfolds, knowing full well that this is a galaxy where survival is a fleeting thing. Guilliman's return may well be the beginning of a new chapter, yes, but whether it is one of resurgence or decay, I leave to history itself. For in the end, this Imperium, this dying empire built on blood and faith, endures not because of hope, but because it clings to life, scraping against the edges of oblivion with a determination that is as maddening as it is tragic.